I feel very passionate that data is the currency of prevention. And I've said that before in multiple areas, and I get really positive feedback when I say it, which I appreciate. And what that means to me is that if we're not collecting data, if we're not using that data, we can't move anything forward.
Hello, PTTC Network. Welcome to episode 6 of the Mid-America PTTC podcast. I'm your host, Dave Clausen, and I'm the director of the Mid-America Prevention Technology Transfer Center. Today we are speaking with Joan Masters, the senior coordinator of Missouri's Partners in Prevention, also known as PIP. Joan is responsible for training and technical assistance to PIP's 21 and soon-to-be 22 member campuses. She also serves as a primary investigator for its grant projects. She provides oversight to projects such as the Missouri Assessment of College Health Behaviors and of the Meeting of the Minds Conference. Joan is able to assist campuses with coalition building, implementing evidence-based strategies, and building peer education programs, in addition to strategic planning. But before we get into the content, we would like to thank our funder, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. Quick note, although funded by SAMHSA, the content of this recording does not necessarily reflect the views of SAMHSA. Welcome to the podcast, everybody. I'd like to thank Joan Masters for joining us. Joan, thanks for being here today.
Thanks. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. And yeah, if you don't mind, I did share a little bit during the introduction of your background, but would you dive a little bit deeper? Because I know you can do it better justice than I can.
Sure. My name is Joan Masters. Hello, everyone. I am the project director for Missouri Partners in Prevention, which is a statewide coalition of campuses in the state of Missouri, focused on addressing some of the critical health and safety issues that our college students are facing in our state. And our coalition is made up of 21 campuses, soon to be 22. We try to expand to campuses as much as we can. And we serve our campuses by providing them ongoing technical assistance, an annual survey called the Missouri Assessment of College Health Behaviors, and then we provide them funding based on their strategic plans for prevention that they do every year, and make sure that they have that necessary training and technical assistance. So I, along with a fantastic team of graduate students and full-time staff and undergraduate research assistants, work to serve the college health community in the state of Missouri.
All right, and almost serving as a guide to help coach those campuses through their prevention, planning their prevention efforts, it sounds like.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I think that's kind of the key role of a statewide coalition is to be that touchstone for campuses.
Yes, absolutely. And just a fun fact for the audience, I myself have a long history of working with Partners in Prevention, or PIP for short, all the way back to, I want to say, 2015. So y'all are doing great work and wonderful partners, and fun little story too about the importance of partners and how awesome PIP is. We recently had a training venue cancel on us just a couple days before our event, and I gave Joan and her staff a quick call, and guess who delivered and found us a venue within just a couple hours. So thank you, Joan, and to your staff and Margot as well. Y'all are awesome. You saved the day.
Absolutely. We've got to look out for each other in prevention.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I always try to say, we're all on the same team in prevention. We really are. So when it comes to, Partners in Prevention, the statewide coalition, what are some of the challenges that you face?
Well, I think that prevention as a whole on college campuses is sort of an ever-changing landscape. Every year we think we have a handle on addressing some of those critical health behavior issues, and then we learn that there are new trends, new drug trends, new experiences. Our students are coming with a higher dedication to their technology, and so just kind of navigating through some of those things and how we reach them. So I think, again, I go back to the importance of a statewide coalition and helping campuses that just cannot possibly possibly keep up on those trends or understand which trends that they really do need to pay attention to and which things are more like fads, and they can stay the course and move past that particular thing. And so that's what Partners in Prevention helps do for our campuses. Because prevention is so hard, and often some of our campuses are doing it in singularity, it is that one college health nurse. They're not on campuses that see prevention as a shared responsibility. We help them share that responsibility with them, but also create those collaborative partnerships on campus and get buy-in and things like that that really address some of those barriers.
Well, that kind of takes the wind out of the sails for my next question. I was going to ask about some of the benefits. I love it. So thorough. But yes, I really like how you said helping campuses keep up with the new trends and the ever-changing drug field and the new students coming in that are, like you said, dedicated to their technology. I really like that. When I think about my own professional development and then seeing some of the needs for the field as well, it's just that. It takes a lot of work to stay up to date with the current trends. You really have to be intentional about it. So having help for your campuses, that's awesome. That's got to be a very big value to them. And that shared responsibility, it all comes back to collaboration. It really does.
Yeah, we say in Partners in Prevention that we want our campuses to understand that prevention is evaluated and it's informed by best practices, and it's a shared responsibility. We want campuses to understand that prevention is also balanced and comprehensive. So by using those 5 kind of key elements of what we call good prevention: balanced, comprehensive, evidence-informed, evaluated, and a shared responsibility, it helps them understand why this work is so tough and why they can't do it alone. And sometimes just kind of giving credence to that for professionals to help them, know that this is not something they should try and do alone, nor is it good practice to do alone, that it helps them relieve some of that pressure. And that's another benefit to the statewide coalition.
Oh, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Actually, we were just doing a strategic prevention framework training, and that was one of the big points we wanted to make, is like, this doesn't fall on one person's shoulders. It takes a team to work through the spiff. I love it. I love it. Now, when it comes to Partners in Prevention, do you have any sort of big successes or accomplishments that you'd really like to share as inspiration for others?
So I think that one of the major benefits that our Partners in Prevention Coalition, or a success story, if you will, is the fact that we do annual data collection and assessment. And so what that means is that we implement the Missouri Assessment of College Health Behaviors, the MACB, every year on our campuses to a random sample or a population level sample, depending on the size of campus. And we then feed that information back to each campus about what the critical health behaviors, and we can look then for campuses about maybe some demographic changes. Are we experiencing maybe more high-risk drinking among our students who are female, or are we particularly concerned about suicide rates or drug use rates among our LGBT population, et cetera? And it really helps our campuses then focus on their strategic plan and set SMART goals and a logic model to then have their roadmap for prevention. And so when I talk to my colleagues who run statewide coalitions nationwide, that really is like, if we didn't do that, I'm not sure our statewide coalition would still be functioning. It is really the bread and butter, the cornerstone of the important work that we do. And we're so blessed in the state of Missouri to be funded by the Department of Mental Health that believes in that level of assessment and evaluation, and then feeding that information back. I would say a related sort of success story is that we have really created a sense of data literacy and a culture of assessment among preventionists in the state of Missouri. And sometimes that is going back to that hard prevention work. That's the hardest work that we can do, is understanding the data, working towards it, being patient enough to implement services that address some of those key data points. And so we recently had a statewide meeting where we talked about the data, and multiple people, when they were doing their introductions and talking about why they were excited to be there, they said, I am a total data nerd. I love looking at this. I love, understanding this data and what it means for our students. And 15, 20 years ago, when PIP first started, people just kind of glazed over when they looked at the data. And it was just a very heartwarming feeling to see that we had created that culture of assessment and that really important data literacy, to understand not only the importance of it, but how to understand it, how to use it, and how to work with it on a daily basis.
Oh, yes. That just got me smiling from ear to ear. And in working with folks across the country, I hear a lot of times, we've got this data, but we don't know what to do with it. What does it mean? How do we tease out the story and then apply it? Any
Right.
kind of just short little bullet point tips that you'd like to share with the field?
Well, I think what we do in Partners in Prevention is we give a data report to campuses in terms of an Excel document. So having a partner within, whether it is your statewide coalition or maybe it's a faculty member on campus or a postdoc that could make the data accessible to you so that you're not just looking at spreadsheets that you don't understand. And then we then even make it easier to understand beyond just the Excel document we give them, but we either over Zoom or a conference call or in person, we visit each campus to show them how we're interpreting the data for them. And we talk with them about, what we see. And so if we're looking at maybe rising cannabis trends or rising use of certain drugs on campus, we can ask them about what some of the key indicators might be of that, or what the precedents are for that use. And we can kind of fill in the story. And by including them in understanding that illustration of the data, they realize that they know more about the data than they thought they did. It was just numbers on a page before, but when you can kind of engage all those academic senses of looking at the data, understanding it, telling a story about it, it really brings to life what's happening on campus.
Yes.
And sometimes, again, that's hard work. That's time, a lot of time that people don't have. And so finding a partner on campus, finding someone that needs that level of experience with data might be, a way to kind of get that offering to you and help a preventionist move forward with that.
Yes, indeed. And I love your one-on-one data-focused meetings with the campuses. That really gives you the opportunity to build a relationship with them and help guide and coach them. But then, just like you had said, including them also teaches them and then reaffirms and builds their confidence. Like, hey, you do actually know this. It actually, it's the reason I bring up confidence. That kind of leads into a future episode that we'll be doing with David Anderson, who was one of the creators of the College Alcohol Survey. And he's actually unpacks the pyramid of success, one piece of which is confidence. So it is very important. It really is. It's a very time-heavy, time-intensive process, especially when you bring in all of the steps of the strategic prevention framework.
Absolutely.
What advice would you give to a campus, working through the SPIF process or their formal strategic planning process, whatever that may be?
Well, one thing that we did recently, first of all, I have an amazing staff in Partners in Prevention. So when I say we, I really do mean we, and most of the time I mean they. Margot Leitch, who's our communications coordinator, and Dong Ding, who's our evaluation coordinator. Really, they both actually recently attended a SAPS training, and they learned a lot more about the SPIF model, and they took some of that knowledge back to our coalition. And then in partnership with one of our former staff members and prevention leaders, Kathleen Radcliffe in Indiana, with upstream prevention, she consulted with us and gave us some really great tools to think about how to really streamline the idea of strategic planning. And before, our campuses would write strategic planning documents that were 20 pages long, and they had every bit of data information. And so they were so exhausted after doing strategic planning that they actually didn't want to implement what they had done. Mm-hmm. And so with Dong and Margot's just really focus on helping these campuses write strategic plans that were definitely full of SMART goals, things that were measurable, that they were going to feel that they had accomplished the goals once they focused on them. Mm-hmm. Things that you could see the attachment of each strategy and objective to the larger goal. And then in their consultation with Kathleen, really helped bring that all together. We started just with some very simple strategic planning templates and asked campuses to really think about their strategic plan in a couple pages or less within a logic model. And logic models are scary, and I wish they had kind of a sexier name than logic model. Mm-hmm. But really just truly thinking, kind of like a map. When you go into Google Maps, you put, this is where I'm going to start and this is where I'm going to end, but there's a lot of information in between. And so when you really think about what is in between, and you fill that in your logic model, and you don't take so much time that you're exhausted by the time that you do it, I think that's kind of more of a key to success than we can even realize, because I think it goes back to, what David will talk about in a future podcast is confidence. If we can breed confidence in preventionists, we're going to have better prevention, and better prevention that does, in fact, create the change that we want to see on campus. Yes. And in prevention, David and I talked about it, it's a lot of work. It really is. And it's tiring. But that commitment, keep on working. I love that you brought up logic models. I happen to be a fan of them. It took a while to really wrap my head around them and understand them, but they are a powerful tool. In fact, I have a 9-foot wide, 6-foot tall logic model on the wall in my office. Nice. So that's how big of a logic model nerd I can be. But it's great to look back and all right, am I still on the right course? It's the foundation for my roadmap, like you had said. Right. Absolutely. All right. Now, here's a new question that I'm bringing to the podcast. So you're the first that gets to hear it. What advice would you give to your younger self when you were new to the prevention field? What did you wish you knew back then that you know now? I think that it's probably advice that I ended up taking, which is good, and that is to stay the course. There are some really common mistakes we can make in prevention. Failure to provide really proper dosage of the prevention that we do, or the failure to recognize the fact that there are a lot of outside factors that influence the behavior of our students. And so we can't take that personally when the prevention that we do doesn't work out in the plan that we have. And I think the other thing that is, I think, difficult to take that burns out a lot of prevention professionals is the fact that this is not a static environment. These students, a long time ago, someone quoted or had the quote that alcohol and substance abuse prevention on campus is something that enrolls every semester and never graduates. And so these students enroll every semester. Sometimes they're new, sometimes they've been there. We lose students every year that we've trained and done good work with, and then we have a new crop for them to do. So, as I'm, working with young professionals on my staff and providing mentorship, I just want them to hear that it's okay to stay the course, and it's okay to not necessarily always get what you thought you were going to get. And just really to go back to that sense of core values. And I think that's also what a logic model does for us. It gives us a sense of what we're going to stay true to and what our core values are going to be for the work that we do to get the outcome that we want. So, yes, I think staying the course in prevention is one of the hardest things that we can do, but it's really the most important. In the grant field, especially if we have high turnover, grants turnover. If we have dedicated staff that can stay with the programs that they manage, which I know is hard in the grant world, but we really do have more of a chance of being successful. Yes, indeed.
I love sort of both of those. Stay the course and stay true to your core values.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much value and just wisdom in that, not just for the prevention field, but just personally as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know myself, I get overworked, overloaded, stressed out, and burnout. Compassion fatigue is a real thing. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think we as a field also need to remind ourselves to, self-care,
Mm-hmm.
take care of yourself. But then I like to remind folks too that prevention is about people.
Mm-hmm.
Often we end up talking so much about evidence-based strategies. What does the data say? But in the end, it's about changing lives and
Mm-hmm.
helping people. So yes, just side thoughts that popped in my head. I love it. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
if you could share one message with the prevention field, like a billboard or a short 140 character tweet, just one message, what would that be?
I feel very passionate that data is the currency of prevention, and I've said that before in multiple areas, and I get really positive feedback when I say it, which I appreciate. And what that means to me is that if we're not collecting data, if we're not using that data, we can't move anything forward. And so it would be irresponsible for me as the recipient of state or federal funding and grants to not be tracking the work that we do and the change that we've had, whether positive or negative, through our data. I would feel that that would be fiscally irresponsible and as a taxpayer not appropriate for me to take funds without doing evaluation. And so if a campus or a statewide coalition is not collecting data and not looking at so many ways in which that data can be used either to receive additional funding or to identify maybe that a program needs to be sunsetted so that that money can be freed up for other things, it really helps drive everything that we do. In fact, it's almost like thinking about a world without something that's really essential, like the sun. And so when I think of prevention without data, it just doesn't seem like it just doesn't work. And so that would be, from my super data nerd sense, data being the currency of prevention would be my sort of like tweet or billboard.
Yes. So is that included in your email signature for every email you send out?
It is not. I haven't gotten that far.
That should be your catchphrase. So I go with build the community to build the capacity, because I believe in community in so many different ways. And yeah, that can be your catchphrase. I like it.
There you go.
And it actually kind of made me think back to your reference to a map when planning. I've used that same analogy, and I'm trying to update it. So when you go to take a trip and you pull out your phone and look at the GPS, you're not going to get where you want to go unless you know where you're at to begin with.
Right.
You're not going to get that feedback. Are you going the right direction? Should you turn left instead of right? And that's what data is. It's going to tell you where you're at, and it's going to tell you which direction you're headed, and help guide all of your other prevention efforts.
Right. You'll get the rerouting, redirecting, the thing that Siri often gives me when I'm going the wrong direction. If you're using data, if you're not going to know that you've gotten to the wrong place until you get there. And you might not even know that you've gotten to the wrong place. You just might not be getting the outcomes that you want.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. All right. There's so much value in this conversation today. Thank you. Do you have any kind of final thoughts or shout outs you'd like to share with our audience?
No, I guess would like to say that, I appreciate this conversation. I appreciate the federal support for the work that we do on a daily basis, sort of in the boots on the ground. And this certainly, the work that we do in PIP is not possible without, as I mentioned, our tremendous staff, our funding source, the Department of Mental Health, and really, most importantly, the schools that put their trust in us every day to sort of be their guide through this time in prevention and in higher education. So I just highly enjoy the work that I do, and it's because of all of those folks that kind of contribute a willingness to move forward together.
That strong team approach.
Mhm.
Yes, indeed. All right. Well, where could listeners find more information about PIP? Do you have a website, social media? Um,
We do.
mhm,
We are on Instagram, on Facebook, and Twitter at Missouri PIP, and that's PIP.
mhm.
And we also have a website which includes a lot of the data that we collect, our research briefs. Like I said, our communications coordinator, Margot Lightshoe, has really built that website to be a technical assistance place for anyone in prevention, not just the state of Missouri, and
Mhm.
that is pip.missouri.edu.
Okay, wonderful. Uh, I imagine folks will be heading to that website to check out those data briefs. So that really is so valuable, and be great to see a good example. And for the listeners, I will put links to the social media and the website in the show notes. All right. Well, that pretty much concludes this episode. Thank you again, Joan, for taking time to chat with us today and all of the good work you're doing, not just for Missouri, but for the field of prevention as a whole. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave.